Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It's our Monday, May 9th, 2020. We'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this time, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission that are here this evening. To my immediate right is Jim Fitzsimmons, a commission member. Next to Jim is Jeff Cohan, also a commission member. And next to Jeff is Jamie Hine, an alternate on the commission. To my immediate left is J.P. Vanoit, who is the commission vice chairperson. Next to J.P. is Steve Allenson, and next, who's also a commission member. Next to Steve is Dave Parent, who is an alternate on the commission. At the staff table to the left is Cheryl Ann Tubby, who is our recording secretary, and next to Cheryl Ann is Kevin Pagini, our town planner. Our next order of business is to approve minutes of several meetings. The first meeting would be our Thursday, April 7th, 2022. It's a special meeting. Any commission members with any additions, corrections to the minutes? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion on those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that I think I cut out. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of our special meeting for the date of Thursday, April 7th, 2022.
Do we have a motion by Mr. Allenson? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on. Our meeting on Monday, April 11th, 2022. Again, do we have any comments, corrections, additions to those minutes? If none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Wallingford Planning and Zoning April 11th minutes.
We have a motion by Mr. Vanoit to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
And if you note, Mr. Allenson has abstained. Thank you. Okay, getting down to our business now. Before we get started, there's one item on our agenda that's not going to be heard this evening. It's not ready to be taken up. It is new business, item number 4, a site plan, site improvements relative to parking, GKN Aerospace at 14 Research Parkway. And again, that's at this point not, I believe Mr. Pagini indicated it's still in wetlands.
Correct.
Okay. Which brings us now to our first public hearing on our agenda. It's a special permit hair salon to conference center by R. Mitchell at 9 South Cherry Street. Mr. Allenson, if you would please read the legal notice and note all correspondence for the record, if you would please. Excuse me. Oh, here you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 402-22, special permit, conversion of a hair salon to a conference center for Robert Mitchell at 9 South Cherry Street, TC, Town Center District. We have correspondence from Kevin Pagini, our town planner, to Robert Mitchell, dated April 22, 22. We have an interdepartmental referral received April 18th, 2022 from, I believe, our fire marshal. We have an interdepartmental referral from our town engineer, date of receipt, April 11th, 2022. An inter-office memorandum from Eric Kruger to Kevin Pagini, dated May 5th, 2022. And we just received correspondence from Lazarus and Sargent, dated April 26th, 2022. I believe that completes the record, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. If the applicant and or his representative or its representative would please begin to introduce himself and begin their presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Samuel Sargent. I'm principal of the firm Lazarus and Sargent Architects. at 50 North Main Street, Wallingford, Connecticut. And I'm here tonight representing Rob Mitchell, who is the owner of 156 Quinnipiac Street. I typed up a really neat little thing here, but I may really mess it up. But what's going to be really great is that a butter's letter that I just handed you will basically be the gist of my presentation. So I'm here representing Rob Mitchell, the owner of 156 Quinnipiac Street, who also owns a building at 9 South Cherry Street. You probably know this wonderful building. It's the old fire station. And he has his company there, ASG Technologies. It's an IT business. As you know, it's a special permit application to change the use of this former beauty salon into a conference center, and that's why we have this application before you, because the conference center is a much better adjunct to my client's growing needs. Provided in the application are, of course, a site plan. I brought the small copies. You guys have to deal with the large copies. And the toned area represents the existing beauty salon. And as you know, it has a mansard front facade, and from the street it looks like 2 separate buildings, but they are conjoined. The second drawing is a floor plan layout of what we're proposing, and they look identical, but one was intended to show the demolition that we're taking place. It shows 3 small conference rooms of 3 different sizes, a manager's office, and the required bathroom facilities. So what we are trying to do here is repurpose this existing beauty salon as a conference center that will serve not only Mr. Mitchell's needs through his ASG business, but also be available for conference groups that might want to rent the space. The exterior of the building is going to basically at this point be left unchanged, except we're going to fill in that nasty space between the 2 buildings and demolish the front facade, the mansard, and create something that's more traditionally New England. And it'll be a unified facade, and it'll also provide for a renovated entrance for the new conference center. As I stated, the creation of this conference center is intended to augment Mr. Mitchell's business, and as such, it will have a very low impact on the site. And that's it, gentlemen. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, sir. Commission members with questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Hine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear for the record that this property is going to be used solely as a conference center, correct? It's not going to be your client's not going to be running his business out of this facility, correct?
No, it is intended solely as a conference center. In fact, it's on a separately owned piece of property. He and his business own 9 South Cherry Street, where his business is located. This is not conjoined with that property. It is a standalone property.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that it's solely a conference center. It's not going to be used for any other business purpose.
It is not going to be used for any other business.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzsimmons, I believe you had a question or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to confirm, you received the letter from the office regarding the building orientation regulations?
I'm sorry?
Did you receive the letter from the town planner's office regarding the building orientation regulations, the so-called front of the building?
You know, I'm not sure I did. Did I get something from you, Kevin?
Yeah, I sent it.
When did you send it out?
Well, it was directed to the owner, not yourself. That's why I was asking if you saw it, because I was going to ask you if you could make sure to address it for the record.
I definitely sent it to you. I remember.
I apologize.
Sir,
I don't.
here's a copy. If you'd like to just take a moment, we apologize that might not have. But if you just take a moment or two to look at it, and then if you could respond, please.
I'm not not sure how to address this. I think the intent of what we're doing with this building is actually to create a much better front entrance that faces 156, or faces Quinnipiac Street. We're going to take that nasty little area, fill it in, and...
Sir, if you could just bring that a little bit closer, the light is flashing. Well, you can't see, but I can.
Okay,
Actually,
all
Mr.
right.
Fitzsimmons can.
All right, so to recap, the intent of what we're doing here is to create a conference center that does have a presence on Quinnipiac Street, and it will have a brand-new entrance, and not the existing entrances to the beauty salon, and that new entrance will be between the two facades, which will be completely redone.
That's a great, I just wanted that on the record because you understand the building orientation reg. We want the front of the building to face streets. So,
I agree with you, and when you look at the site plan, this building
Yeah.
seems to have a little bit of a doubt.
yeah. Oh, and again, because of the unique piece of property and,
Yes.
the two. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. Other commission members? Yes, for my comments, I don't have any questions, but I'm kind of looking at this and saying I think it's a good repurposing of the, the building. I think that property's been, vacant for a period of time, and I think what you're looking to do is to take what perhaps looks like two buildings, which is really one, but
Yeah.
looks like two buildings, to fill that space in and, create one building. And as you indicated, you're going to redo the facade. So I think, in my mind, I believe that's certainly very positive for that. With that, Mr. Pagini, do you have any comments before I go out to the public?
No further comments.
Sure. Again, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public would like to make any comments on the application, please feel free to come forward and name and address. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the applicant. If you'd like to make any further comments, I suspect you don't, but if you do,
I'm
feel
all
free.
set. Thank you very much.
Good. Any commission members, any final comments? Seeing none, with that, I'd entertain a motion to close our public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we make a motion to close the public hearing for application 402-22, special permit hair salon to conference center, R. Mitchell, 9 South Cherry Street.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, now I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the special permit application 402-22 Mitchell, 9 South Cherry Street. Special permit request for Mitchell, located at 156 Quinnipiac Street, to use an existing building formerly used as a hair salon for a conference center and add a 125 square foot addition on plans entitled Limited Property / Boundary Survey Improvement Location Survey ASG Information Technologies, 9 South Cherry Street, and Robert Mitchell, 156 Quinnipiac Street, Wallingford, Connecticut, dated February 16, 2022, subject to 1, comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated April 11, 2022, 2, comments from the Town Planner dated April 22nd, 2022, 3, comments from Allison Kapuscinski, Town Engineer, dated April 27, 2022, and 4, 6 copies of the approved final plans forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, your application's been approved this evening. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, and you have great evenings, too.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Brings us to our next item, which is special permit fill and excavation for M. Salzillo at 33 Summerwood Drive. Again, Mr. Allenson, if you'd please read the legal notice and all correspondence, and if the applicant would please come forward to begin preparing for his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 403-22, special permit excavation and fill for Michael Salzillo to correct an existing zoning violation at 33 Summerwood Drive, R18 zone. We have correspondence from our town planner to Michael Salzillo dated April 22, 22. We have a zoning investigation record with a complaint date of 9/17/21. An interdepartmental referral from our fire marshal, date of receipt April 8th, 22. An interdepartmental referral from our town engineer, date of receipt April 8th, 22. Correspondence to our town planner, Mr. Pagini, from Eric Wagner, dated April 26th, 22. A memorandum from our town planner to this commission, dated April 20th, 22. And a memorandum from Aaron O'Hare, our environmental planner, to Kevin Pagini, our town planner, date May 6th, 22. And I believe that is all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson. If the applicant and/or his representative please introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Yeah, good evening, Commission. I'm Eric Wagner from AI Engineers. I'm also here with the owner applicant.
Sir, could you please move the microphone just a little bit closer to you if you
How's
would,
it?
please?
Is that better?
Oh, that's terrific.
Okay, I'm Eric Wagner from AI Engineers. I'm here with the owner applicant, Mike Salzillo. And this is a cut and fill excavation application for a situation that got started wrongly, I guess. And we've got hired to fix the situation, which is what our design has done. We went out and surveyed, saw what the existing conditions were, and came up with a plan to make a resolution to what was happening with the embankments. And it's going to be riprap sloped to stop the erosion. There's going to be an additional drainage under drains to help with the excessive amount of water that's bleeding out of the existing slope cut right now, and that'll work into the town drainage system. And that is basically it. Everything will be restored back to where it was, with the riprap being in the neighbor's, in Mike's property. And it should be a stabilized slope with the conditions that we have designed and are actively hoping to get approved.
If you could, just for my benefit, and I suspect for other commission members' benefit too, could you just give us a little bit of genesis, what this whole project was and how the applicants got to the point where he finds himself now? What was the original intent in doing the excavation? If you could please just give some background into that, if you would. It would certainly help me.
Okay, I will have to defer to you, Mike.
Just please, sir, just please your name and address.
My name is Mike Salzillo. I live at 33 Summerwood Drive. I'm the applicant for the permit.
Thank you.
At the end of last year, I decided my backyard was a sloping hill, wooded hill that came towards the back of the house. We decided we wanted to try to create an enjoyable space for the family. I have 2 young kids. So we removed some trees and began an excavation process, and we were going to do a retaining wall. I hired a contractor, ended up being not capable of completing the work, made a complete mess, didn't do any drainage. He excavated a large area. I had water pooling at my neighbor's foundation. I had water and silt running out my driveway and down the street. He basically took my money, realized he didn't know what he was doing, and then stopped showing up until I was forced to fire him. So I was stuck in a difficult position. I hired a new contractor who came in who's very capable, very reputable, and he's been putting things back together and put in all the proper drainage. Since he's been there, there's no more water issues. All the drainage is functioning as it's supposed to, and the riprap is going up. Everything's already excavated. I was lied to by the contractor. I'm in the process of a lawsuit right now with the original contractor. He told me that he had secured all the permits. I have texts of him telling me that he had secured the permits. I had no idea that I needed engineered drawings, engineers to come in and provide all these drawings for this permit. I'm in the process of suing him now, and that's pretty much where we are at this point.
Okay, thank you. I guess before I go to commission members, Mr. Pagini, any comments, if you would, on this?
Mr. Salzillo was very responsive once he was notified of the violation. We went out as a staff just to evaluate the site. It was a big mess, to say the least. So we were able to advise Mr. Salzillo as to how to go about remediating the site. He had to kind of wait until winter was over to actually hire an engineer and get the plans together, but since then, he's been quite responsive in getting the, so I did put a memo in your packets just to potentially maybe lessen the fees for Mr. Salzillo, but that's up to the commission as to how they want to proceed with that.
Okay. Thank you. With that, commission members with questions for the applicant. Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. I really sympathize with your situation. Is your site stabilized right now so that, you know, you're not getting any runoff and all that?
Yes, most of the drainage is in. There's a small section of piping that still has to go in for the drainage. But most of the riprap is in. There's no more erosion, and the water has not been an issue. We've had several heavy rainstorms, and there's been no puddling, no pooling. All the water is draining as it should.
And last question, how much longer do you think to complete the project?
End of the month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other commission members? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When was the last time someone was working on the site?
I actually had 3 or 4 truckloads of stone dropped off on Mother's Day, so yesterday.
Okay. I was out there this morning, and I had to drive by 3 times, because if it was my neighbor, I would have been a lunatic. I hear what the town planner had said. I'm having a tough time because the information we have in front of us says on 9/17/2021, the town of Wallingford received a zoning violation, from the environmental. It was a referral from the environmental planner, and then at 9/20, 4 days later, contractor named here went to the office, special permit app and info. 9/27, call from the property owner, special permit forthcoming. So that was 9/27/21. I know it's New England, I know there's winter, but I'm confused on the timeline. When did work start?
It started probably about a month before that, I would say August of '21, and then there was, you know, basically I was robbed. I gave the guy a whole bunch of money to start the project, and then he took off and just made a complete mess. So, you know, I had to pretty much borrow money, scramble to be able to get work started again, to be able to get things in line with what the town was requesting. So, you know, it's been a long, difficult process in the last 6 months.
And I hear you. I just, like, the notice of violation I'm looking at that was sent to you was dated September 20th, 21, and then October 29th, you received another notice from the town, and then with pictures we have, and then finally, a cease and desist was issued by the zoning enforcement on January 25th of this year. This is the first time I've seen this on our agenda. Is that right?
Yes.
So I guess I'm confused by the sense of urgency when it started in September and we're discussing it in May.
Well, in order to even sit in front of you guys, I needed an engineer, which cost money. I needed a new contractor, which cost money. So it was mostly money issues. I mean, I started a project that I thought was going to cost one price, and the contractor came in, took all my money, and then, you know, in order to sit in front of you guys, I had to have engineered drawings. I had to have a contractor stabilize the ground. It took me some time to get that together.
Okay. Then if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, a question to the town planner. Why was the cease and desist only issued in January?
Because the zoning enforcement officer was working with the landowner, so she gave him a little bit of time to try to get things together, like he stated. She didn't want to be too harsh, but we were out there with the town engineer and the environmental planner the whole time, just checking, making sure the site was being at least stabilized during that point of time. But she didn't want to push the cease and desist because he was being proactive in engaging in dialogue at least.
So if I'm reading from the letter, and the town planner is well aware of the office, the letter is dated January 25th of this year. It does talk about the potential for fines. I suspect I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the town planner anyway. Have we collected any fines from this applicant?
No.
Okay.
But the town engineer did also have the ability to fine him if she saw fit.
I'm sorry?
The town engineer also had the ability to fine him, but she decided not to as well.
Okay. I guess, and this is not directed at the applicant, more the staff. I mean, zoning enforcement has always been an issue, and this to me, despite your situation, the party, you know, and your lawsuit is separate from this commission, this is not how these things should work. And I'm concerned that the letter that was sent to you on September 30th of 21 says you're hereby ordered to correct these violations within 30 days from receipt of this office. So and of course I was looking at the information that you supplied. You're not a new purchase. You bought the property in 2016. So you've lived there 8 years, correct?
6 years, 2016.
Oh, sorry, 6 years. Sorry, bad math. 6 years. Okay. If you receive approval, do you have the funds to finish this?
Yes.
Okay. And did you receive, or your representative received, the letter from the Planning and Zoning Office dated April 22nd? And could one of you address the questions from the town planner?
Yes, Mr. Wagner did write a letter addressing those questions. It's 40322E in your packets.
Is that his letter of 26?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members? Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just reviewing the record as well. And to be honest, I've seen this in practice happen to many of my clients. And I feel awful for you, sir. It's terrible. And some of these people out there, they just bilk you till you're dry, and then you're stuck with a problem. I honestly believe the applicant when he says he was stuck. And even if we came down and things were handled, which is not Mr. Salzillo's fault, the way they should have been, I do not believe that they could have been, and we would have been in a different situation. So while I appreciate your sentiments, Mr. Fitzsimmons, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying, this is not the applicant's fault, and I just want to be on the record and say I've seen this many times in my practice, and I don't want you, sir, to get the wrong impression from this commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allenson. Other commission members? Yes, Mr. Hine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town planner, do we know when the last time a town representative was out to the property to inspect it?
I believe the environmental planner went out there a couple days ago.
Are we comfortable that the problems at the property have been resolved?
Well, they haven't been resolved yet, but this will address the remaining problems, yes.
Okay.
Because it has been stabilized to a point where it's not running off anymore, but it hasn't been completely rectified.
Okay, well, that's sort of what I was getting at. I mean, we're comfortable, the representation has been made, I think, tonight that everything is has been stabilized, and that there's not the runoff that there was or the puddling that there was. And I want to just be certain that, comfortable that that we agree with those representations.
It doesn't look great right now, but hopefully this plan will address, the town engineer is actually confident that this plan will address everything that's outlying and outstanding on that site. Yes.
Okay, and then once the project is done, who will be doing the inspection of the property?
Myself, the environmental planner, and the town engineer, just to make sure that everything is set.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I believe you had one additional comment or question.
I do, and I agree with Commissioner Allenson, and trust me, I'm a nice guy. Zoning violations go right through me, and so this one, when I was there this morning, I was thinking, it looks the same as the pictures, and I'm thinking like it just happened. And then when I looked at the documentation, I feel for the neighbors, I feel for you. I mean, I'm not a lawyer like Commissioner Allenson, but it sounds like you have a case, but that's not for me, you know, and I just concerned for the town, because what happened has impacted your neighbors. It has impacted others, and I think we, you know, if we approve it, we're gonna have bonding requirements. This is why we have things. This is why we have the rules. So it's unfortunate that you were led to believe that your first contractor applied for and received permits, because he would have had to be before us. It would not have been just filling out an application. Am I correct on that? Mm-hmm. So
Yes.
what you're proposing is large. It's a large scale. It's not a simple retaining wall. And your area is significant. So as I said, I drove by this morning thinking, I had to keep driving by thinking, oh my gosh, thinking and then when I looked at the timeline, it was a little, so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Would you perhaps like us to make a motion to see, in fact, if you are a nice guy?
Put it on the record.
Put it on the record. He's a nice guy. I have just one, before I go out to the public, I just have one question. There was, Mr. Wagner, you provided a memo dated April 26, 2022, and it dealt with certain diameters of some pipe, and then that's going to be in there. And then there was just a response from our environmental planner on May 6th. And I guess her comment was, it basically says, note, engineer should clarify if the proposed 6-inch diameter under drain indicated in the north was meant to indicate a 4-inch under drain as proposed on the south side of the slope area.
It's going to be a 4-inch under drain underneath the riprap going across his backyard. And then when it hits the neighbors, it's going to outlet into a riprap pad, which will help trap some of the sediment that's within it. And then it'll go into a catch basin. And from that catch basin, it'll be a 6-inch, a yard drain, not a catch basin, a yard drain. And then that'll be a 6-inch pipe from that yard drain out to tie into where the roof leaders are going into the back of the catch basin. They're about 2 or 3 feet behind the catch basin. There'll be a tie-in there with our 6-inch pipe from the catch basin tying into the 6-inch pipe for the roof leaders going into the existing 6-inch that's out there already into the catch basin. So you got a 4-inch under drain actively under the riprap, but the 6-inch will outlet it into the street.
I guess I'd ask Mr. Pagini, do you understand all of that? And what's been represented by Mr. Wagner? I know there was a comment by our environmental planner.
Yes,
His comment is what's shown on the plans. Is that correct?
yes.
So then I can, as far as our environmental planner's comments, can disregard that.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public that would like to comment on the application, please come forward and name and address. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to first to the applicant. If you'd like to make any any final comments? Okay. Any commission members would like to make any final comments? Yes, Mr. Cohan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just want to, since fellow commissioners have kind of weighed in on, the fee, I just want to go on record as, supporting the request to, either eliminate or reduce that. I agree with Mr. Allenson, because quite honestly, I've been through this myself with contractors, and You know, you pay them a lot of money and expect them to do the right thing and know what they're doing. And, you know, this was not a cheap project. So I understand, you know, when you made comments about getting funding and things like that. So I understand that, and I would support, you know, reducing this or eliminating it.
Let's start out with Mr. Pagini, didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Mr. Pagini, what's the accumulation of fees?
I believe it was $1,100 total.
Okay. We've heard Mr. Cohen's comments, other comments from commission members with respect to either waiving fees and/or reducing fees. Anyone? Yes, Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a major feeling one way or another, which probably means splitting the difference is where I lie. Thank you.
That would be my approach. Other commission members? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
I certainly could support a reduction to half. I mean, I pointed out to Mr. Cohen, this is why this application fee is so much, because these applicants have issues like this, which is why, you know, this is not a normal fee. This is why this is on our pricing schedule for fees. This is one of the bigger fees we get for excavation, because we've had issues similar. So I could support half, because I am a nice guy.
You've just proved it, Mr. Fitzsimmons. With that, if there's no other comments from commission members, I suspect that half, correct my math, is $550?
Yes.
Seeing no further comments from commission members, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing for application 403-22, special permit, fill, and excavation for 33 Summerwood Drive.
Do we have the second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohen, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, now at this point in time, I entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve application 403-22, a special permit request for Salzillo located at 33 Summerwood Drive to remediate and stabilize a fill and excavation zoning violation on plans entitled Boundary Survey dated March 3rd, 2022, subject to 1, comments from the Fire Marshal's Office dated April 27th, 2022, 2, comments in interoffice memorandum from Environmental Planner Aaron O'Hare to the Planning and Zoning Department dated May 6, 2022, 3, comments from Allison Kapuscinski, Town Engineer, dated April 27th, 2022. 4, comments from the Town Planner, dated April 22nd, 2022. 5, when work is completed, the site will be subject to a final inspection by town staff. 6, due to the site currently being in zoning violations, as well as the unstable nature of the site, all final stabilization and construction activity must commence immediately. 7, 6 copies of the approved final plan forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Office. And 8, waiving the 1,100-hour fee to $550 fee.
Thank you, Mr. Benoit. We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved. Have a good evening and good luck with your dealing with your former contractor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, it brings us to our next order of business, which is a site plan outside storage for B. Fabriello, Iron Horse Equipment, 71 South Turnpike Road. If the applicant will please come forward and to begin preparing for the presentation. And if you would, Mr. Allison, please note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an interdepartmental referral from our fire marshal. Date of receipt, April 11th, 22. That is all I have. Thank you.
Okay. With that, if the applicant would please introduce himself and begin his presentation.
Hi, my name is Ben Fabriello. I'm the owner of Iron Horse Equipment that now resides at 71 South Turnpike Road in Wallingford. This has been ongoing for a while, and I want to start off by apologizing to everybody for the amount of time that this has taken to get to this point. It has come to my attention that in the beginning we did not handle it properly and did not get the correct people involved that we should have. Since then, we have had an engineer come out to the site and kind of redesign it a few times, hoping to fix the issues that we have caused. Recently, we had received a cease and desist. We went and moved a majority of our outside storage to another property that we were able to secure in North Haven, where that is conforming use at the moment. That being said, we still do have our service equipment outside, customers' equipment that we bring in and out of the shop while we work on it and then return to their houses. In the last 72 hours, I was just informed that we have possibly found another location within virtually walking distance that we think could support the remainder of our needs for storage. And at this point, we are trying to pursue that because if it all works out, we will not need any special application.
Okay. That's the extent of your presentation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Pagini, comments on this before I go to commission members?
It's essentially the same thing that was heard for 2 months roughly. He did, like he said, he mentioned, it looks like as if roughly 40% of the violations have been removed thus far. However, the fenced-in areas in the front still remain, but I think approving this would give him the opportunity to at least build the outside storage area and move everything into that fenced-in back area, which I think would be the best option at this point. So I think it's up to the commission to really see if he's done enough to where they feel comfortable voting. And like I said before, the approval of the site plan does not remedy the zoning violations, so the zoning violations will still need to be addressed regardless.
Yeah, just before I go to other commission members, again, you mentioned perhaps in 72 hours you may have, or within 72 hours, you may know if you have other space to relocate your, the items that are in, I guess, front in those two storage pens on either side of the opening. When you say 72 hours, is it 72 hours you'll know if the building is available, or within 72 hours everything could be taken care of?
72 hours, they will be letting us know if they're vacating their property in July. So it would be, yeah.
Okay, so then it wouldn't be remedied until sometime in July. If that's not available, you've presented us with a plan. What's the time frame if the commission were to decide to approve this? What's the time frame for getting that that storage, the storage area in the back of the property completed? When I look at it, it doesn't seem like it's a major project. Maybe I'm wrong, but what's your time frame on that?
So we have had 2 contractors come out and look at the site. Both were in the 4-week time frame from the time that they start, and at the moment we have not scheduled anybody, as there has been we don't have an approval on it.
Excuse me?
As we have not had an approval on it, so we have not scheduled any contractors yet. So.
What you're saying, if the commission decided to approve this, that outside storage could be completed within 4 to 5 weeks.
Of them starting it. But
Yeah, exactly.
they have schedules, so I'm not sure when they would be able to exactly start on the project.
Okay. Commission members with questions for the applicant? See no? Yeah, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in my west side tour of Wallingford this morning, I drove by your place several times. Remember, I'm a good guy, okay? I shouldn't have to say that. I'm concerned because I've had several people who I know who live over in the area who ask me how this can be approved. So I appreciate that the the update from the last 72 hours. If I'm going to ask questions a little different the way that the chairman did. I guess, you know, the concern I have and have had is, quite frankly, as the town planner refers to it for us, is the fenced areas in front of the business. That, I think, is probably the most egregious zoning violation, because that building, that area is not approved for that type of use. So how soon can the fenced off area be cleaned up and removed?
We would need a place to move it. That's where we're at the moment. So if we end up renting space in the building next door to us, then in July, I mean, it's a matter of a couple hours, we can move all that stuff. It's just having the space to move it to. That would be the ideal one because it gets it out of sight. It does not require any special permits. It's a warehouse space.
So the new location would be inside versus outside storage?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's storage, right, versus, we had this before when your representative was here, you know, like the car dealerships in town. I don't consider that storage. Those vehicles are for sale when the car is in the lot. The stuff that I see in the fenced-off area, is that for sale? Is that being serviced? Or what is the nature of that material?
Everything in those two cages is there for service. We do not own any of that property. That is all customers' equipment.
So it's customer equipment, okay. So inside storage would take care of the first issue,
Yes.
right? You would expand into a similar area, hopefully, if the deal potential for 72 hours works out. So, so exactly what are you asking us tonight? Because that's where I'm confused. I'm trying, you know, and again, this has been an active violation for some time, and I appreciate you're here, and I appreciate you wanting to stay in town. It's a business in town, and I support business in town. But the rules are for everybody, and this is where it's difficult when I see someone and they'll say, well, Fitz, what's going on over there? You know, it's a small town. So, and I think part of it is I want to make sure that there's progress between what you're doing, what the rules are, and what's right, so to speak. And I don't think, you've had a lot of time. You've had a lot of time before the office cited anything, and you've had a lot of time to do it. So I appreciate the 72-hour discussion that you raise. It concerns me because I'm looking for a little more sense of urgency. So exactly what are you asking us, the commission, this evening?
I'm asking to table this and allow us time to pursue this lead on another facility, which then, if this facility is secured, we will not require a special permit and we'll be able to store all of our belongings inside, out of sight.
To prove what a nice guy I am, how long do you need for us to table it? I mean, it's not my decision, but I'm just one of numbers. How long are you looking for a table?
I'm looking for 30 days to be able to secure this building. The tenant is not able to move out until July 1st, from what I'm being told currently. So I could come back next month and advise as to how we made out with this.
So 1 month. This is the May meeting, so you're saying ideally if we table it for the June meeting, again, not my call, but I'm trying to understand what you're asking for specifically this evening.
I'm asking for more time to try to secure this property so we could take it on July 1st and move all of our stuff out of sight and get this whole issue resolved.
Okay. I have no further questions.
If you're not able, I guess, first question, if you're not able to secure the building, then we're going to be in July, and we're going to be right here, right where we are right now. You're going to be coming before us looking for some approval on this. Whether we approve it or not, you're going to then have to secure a contractor. The contract, we're probably not looking until August or September, in fact, for the violation to be finally taken care of. So I think that's a rather extended time period. You mentioned that the items that are in those two fenced-off areas are service, or items to be serviced. Are you still taking items to be serviced?
Yes, sir.
So this is where I have an issue with that. You have items in there right now to be serviced. Those items are serviced. They're gone. They're back to the customer. Now you're putting more items in there. You're just perpetuating the problem. It's an endless cycle. You know, to me, it would be, look, right now, you have too many items. You have items where they should not be. And they're there, and I think all the commission understands that. Those items now, you have some items that are being taken out, but then you're just filling it back up. So, you know, to me, that's an issue. I understand it's your business to do some servicing, but it just doesn't seem that it's being addressed. You know, one of the issues is that those items in that your service pens, if you would, those should be reduced. Once an item leaves, it just doesn't get replaced. I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I'm not sure about other commission members. I'm not sure how we address that, but, you know, it just seems that the time frame that you're looking at, and I understand, you know, you're trying to address the issue, but if we go back, this issue, I think, originated in June of 2021, is that correct? So,
Yep.
you know, I take it things have certainly been a lot worse. You've improved it to somewhat, but there's still, you know, an ongoing issue that in the time frame, to me, I think is a little bit extended from what you're looking at. Other commission members? We'll start with Mr. Allenson and we'll go to the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I will agree Mr. Fitzsimmons is nicer than me. And Mr. Chairman, I do agree with your comments. This has been ongoing, and you've known about it, and like the commissioner mentioned, I know you got a business to run, you got mouths to feed, you got to take care of bills, get it. But it's also perpetuating something that you've known about for a while. My feeling would be if we knew as a commission that on July 1st, whether it's this alternative building or it's this application would be built and the area was remedied on July 1st, I personally could be okay with that. I can't speak for anybody else, but that would be okay with me. The problem is that this is our May meeting. Our next meeting is in June. We would make the approval, and that would give about 3 weeks for a build that you're telling us takes about 5 to 6 weeks if a contractor could get it done. Does that sound? I just want to make sure I'm saying the right things here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, me personally, if we had assurances that on July 1st, one way or another, this was remedied, I personally could be okay with it. I just don't know how we get there, and I think I'm repeating what other commissioners have said, so I don't want to belabor that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Parent.
Yeah. When Chris Giuliano was here last week, or last time, I think he mentioned something that you had storage property over in Durham. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Then I guess the question is that there is really a plan B. If you can't get the building, plan A, you really would like, get the building right next door. Be out there in July 1st and be gone. But as the guarantee or as the backup, could you move your equipment to Durham? I know that, now that gets to be very difficult because every time you want to work on something, you're taking a ride out to Durham to bring the stuff back. But certainly, I think you could calm or, reassure us that there is a plan B, and the plan B would be one way is that if we're not going to be able to do what we want to do in Wallingford, you can move the stuff to Durham. Can you do that? Can you tell us that, or can you agree with that?
So at this time, we are moving a majority of our equipment. So the crates that were on the Cook Hill Ave side that I think became very well known in the area, those have all been moved and redistributed to North Haven. and 2, Durham.
Okay.
We just went and completed a project in Durham this past week that added a little bit more space there so that we could go and get some of the boxes and things like of that nature out of this facility as well to go and give us a little bit of more room.
Okay, but that's not really answering the question, my question of what you've done. My question to you, sir, is say that your Plan A doesn't work, right? Can you guarantee us by July 1st that that equipment, everything that should be gotten out of there will be gotten out of there? It'll either go to Durham or now, as you're mentioning another space in North Haven. Can you guarantee that to the commission?
I cannot guarantee that we can move all of our service equipment. Once we move the service equipment, I'll be honest with you, I might as well close my doors. It's not cost effective from a manpower perspective, if nothing else. I can't afford to go and move equipment that I'm working on at $90 an hour 2, 3, 4 times before it's complete. Between just the time of evaluating it, we've tried to figure out a way to do it where we could satisfy it while moving the equipment, but we pick up the equipment at the customer's house, we bring it to our shop, we have to evaluate it. From there, it's got to go wait for parts. So that's now going to Durham to wait. Then we have to bring it back to our shop where we're capable of putting it back together, and then it's bringing it back to the customer's house. Moving it just too many times, it's not cost effective for us to, and I understand that's not the commission's fault that it's not cost effective, but at that point, we are pretty much in a position of having to choose to either just close our service department altogether, which we would put us out of business.
I guess, Mr. Pagini, I'd have just a question for you as far as being able to, if the commission were so inclined to approve this, would we be able to stipulate that all work needs to be either this gentleman has to secure another location and move all of that equipment to wherever that may be in the park, or the outside storage needs to be completed and the equipment needs to be put in the outside storage. Now, I understand the gentleman says that, or indicated that, it takes some time. It's going to take some time to figure out if he can get that building or not, and then to get plans and whatever. But it would seem that, starting today, he could probably, if this were approved, he could start a two-prong effort. One, to pursue the building, but then also start to pursue with, a contractor to get some rough quotes, get some time frame. So, the outside storage. But again, if the commission were so inclined to approve it, could it put a stipulation that, the work has to be, either all the equipment needs to be moved and the violation cleared up by July 1st, or the outside storage needs to be completed and the equipment needs to be put there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we could put a time frame on it. I wasn't sure what the time frame should be, so I wanted the commission to decide that, only because I believe Giuliano had stated it would be 3 to 4 months to complete the outside storage area, so I didn't know if that would be too long.
Oh, I think that's way too long for me. I'm not sure about other commission members.
But if he's saying other contractors have told him 5 weeks, then maybe he's gotten other opinions, so. But yeah, I'd like to see it at least within 60 days, some movement on something being done. And I think at least approving the outdoor storage area will give him the 2 options. So at least he has those approvals in place if he does go the building route. So I think it gives him more flexibility to clean it up quicker.
Commission members, any comments? Okay, good guy.
I just asked my good friend Commissioner Cohen, the proposed outside storage area on the map will require excavation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
As I was out there this morning with my cup of coffee, with the plan, looking at it, thinking, that's does that require a different application with you, or?
No, it's part of site plan. He submitted erosion and sediment controls with the site plan application, so, yeah, that's all. It was all taken care of the last application, and then it came back again, so all the comments were reviewed and put into this one. So,
All right.
it's a pretty large excavation, but it isn't something the size of the retaining wall that we just spoke about.
And I suspect I know the answer, but I'm interested to ask, you are a tenant of this property, correct?
Yes, sir.
And a question to the town planner, because I know we haven't fined anybody. Would the fine go to the tenant or to the building owner?
The building owner,
The building owner is aware of your situation?
Very.
yes.
Yeah.
Can we commence fining?
Yeah, I think I hear you, I understand, and as I said, I think that the rules are for everybody. It is the May meeting. I think if the commission is, I could support some window of time, but with the idea being the window would shut and a fine would start, which would be against the owner. And I know it's not something, but we just need some significant activity and significant action. And I appreciate the way you said it. Nobody wants to put you out of business. That is never the intention. But your business is in the wrong location, and you're trying to make it work within the book and the confines. And I would share with you, everyone else in town is doing it by the book. This is really hard. It's really hard because a week from tonight, the ZBA meets, and they hear these all the time. We never hear this type of stuff because everyone says, I meet all the rules, here's what I want to do. This is so different for me personally but I really applaud you for coming in because you have a long-term active zoning violation. So I'm inclined to, if the majority would feel some approval with some timeline, but I think there also has to be the ability for us to fine, which would go against the owner, which of course is a whole separate issue, but we need some activity out here because next thing you know, we'll be discussing in the fall and that's gonna be, well, it's winter, and I can't do that personally, but that's my own opinion, so.
I think that's a very good suggestion, Mr. Fitzsimmons. I guess unless other commission members, have any other comments, I think what would be appropriate would be to decide upon a date of, or a drop dead date, a date of completion, and if it's not met at that time, then just the fines would commence. Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quite honestly, I'm okay with giving a little bit of time extension here, but, some of the other commissioners have alluded to, there really doesn't seem to be a Plan B solution if the, next door neighbor doesn't, can't vacate the premise in July. And then what are you gonna do? Fines aren't really gonna do anything other than, give us some money, I guess. They're not gonna correct the overall violation. And I think, based on the comments you've heard, I think you know what, the direction is if you can't get that extra storage space. But that being said, I'm okay with, giving you some more time.
Mr. Hine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear for the record, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town planner. Is the only current violation the outside storage at this point, or
Yes.
are there other violations?
No, it's just the outside storage, but our new regulations that were passed also ban outside storage in front yards. So I just want to make you aware of that.
And so,
And he
just
has
to be,
2 front yards on that property, so he wouldn't be able to even move it to the side on Cook Hill, so.
and just to be clear, then, there are no more outdoor sales or displays of merchandise for sale, correct?
No, nothing I'm aware of. I believe the trailers out front were indicated that they rent them or something, but I don't know if those are still there or not. I see them there sometimes, then they're gone, so maybe they're being rented.
Okay, that's really just what I wanted to make clear. Thank you.
Other commission members? Mr. Allison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to agree with Commissioner Fitzsimmons and assure you, we do not want you to go out of business. We do not want to put you out of business. But we have a job up here to make sure that these rules are followed by everybody. And you're in a tough bind. And I want to assure you that we're all sitting here having a tough time trying to figure out how to make this work, because we want you to be successful here, okay? Mr. Chairman, I think that, in my opinion, is the old tenant would be out by July 1st. Is that what you're saying? He'd be vacant? Potentially.
Yes, sir. The plan that they've presented so far is that they currently rent 17,000 square feet. Their business no longer requires that much space. So they would like to sublease back 7,000 square feet of the space, and we would be taking over the remaining 10,000 square feet is the current negotiation that we're at.
My opinion is that within 72 hours, sir, I think it would be entirely reasonable for you to start planning to either move your equipment on July 1st or in 72 hours, secure a contractor so that all of your equipment is in a new, secure, enclosed storage facility by the end of July. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, I think that, I think August 1st, but I would generally agree with that. I certainly echo the statements that, Mr. Fitzsimmons and Mr. Allenson said. Certainly, the commission certainly has no intention or does not like or does not want to put a business out of business. But as Mr. Fitzsimmons said, certainly I think you're at the wrong location. But I think it's very clear that the issues we're facing here are issues that you've ignored for almost a year, because this has been brought to your attention, correct me if I'm wrong, it was June of 2021. And I suspect over that period of time, it hasn't gotten much better until the last month or two. So again, certainly we want to keep businesses in town, but as much as I think everybody, quote, feels for you, clearly the issue is you've ignored this for an awful long time. So with that, if there's no further comments from any commission members, I'd entertain any thoughts or any motion on this particular application. Sure. Well, this is not a public hearing, but we do give members of the public the opportunity to speak on the application. Anybody who would like to speak on the application, please come forward, name and address. Seeing no one scrambling to the microphone, I'll bring it back to the commission for any final comments and or a motion. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to confirm through you to the town planner, according to my notes, the applicant never applied for a change of use or sign permits. Has that been resolved, or is that still open as well?
Well, the site plan would correct the, change of use that should have occurred, because he's doing the parking, striping, and everything else. And the sign permits, I don't believe so. I'd have to double check with Amy, but no.
And then so the parking lot has not been restriped since I've been there?
No, because he's waiting on the site plan approval
Absolutely.
to
Okay.
restripe the parking lot.
So it's more than just the outside storage, it's the...
Yep.
Okay, so there's multiple violations versus a singular,
Well,
which would all be
yeah, it's kind
somewhat.
of, the change of use doesn't, I guess, technically would to be taken care of by the site plan, but yeah, he should have done that in the first place, and he didn't, so. But the sign permit, yeah, needs to be, I believe she looked at the signs, I believe they comply, but it was just never formally done.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. That being said, any final comments and/or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application application 208-22, site plan request to remediate an existing outside storage violation at a retail business located at 71 South Turnpike Road on plans entitled Limited Property Boundary Survey Improvement Location Survey Proposed Outdoor Storage Land of 14-16 Broad Street LLC, 71 South Turnpike Road, Wallingford, Connecticut. Dated February 28, 2021, subject to, 1, that no items remain outdoors on display for sale. All merchandise items must be screened and stored in the indicated outside storage area, and no sale shall be allowed to take place in that area. 2, that the zoning violation on the property continues to be remediated before the start of construction in the timeliest manner feasible, and that all the zoning violations are remediated once the outside storage area is completed. 3, an erosion and sediment control bond in the amount of $10,000. 4, 6 copies of the approved plan, final plan forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And 5, all work needs to be completed by August 1st, or all equipment needs all existing zoning violations remediated. I'm sorry, August 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Benoit. We have a motion on the application. Any comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
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 And yes, I think your application has been approved, sir. I think we've had some very direct conversations and comments from the commission. I encourage you to have this done because we really don't want to start fining people, but I think that would be the alternative that would happen if the August 1st, 2022 date isn't met. So good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome,
Thank you.
sir. All right, Mr. Pagini, it brings us up to number 5, our affordable housing plan. If you would please give us an overview on this, and so we can begin a discussion on it, if you would, please.
Sure. So the Affordable Housing Plan was developed in relation with the South Central Regional Council of Governments. It was actually written by Rfgs Associates. And essentially, affordable housing is quite simply housing that costs a household no more than 30% of their income. I'm just going to do some key points on this. Those spending more than 30% of their income on housing needs and thus having less than 70% of their income remaining for other necessities are considered burdened by their housing costs. In Connecticut, about 48% of renter households and 32% of owner households are considered burdened by their housing costs. Cost burdening is a challenge households face, and those most affected are households who earn 80% or less than the area median income. And the area median income is defined by HUD and refers to the midpoint of a region's income distribution, where half the households in a region earn more than the median and half earn less than the median. New Haven County, 80% of the AMI equates to households earning no more than $67,950, and renters at 80% of AMI earn no more than $60,000 annually. In Wallingford, 8 out of the 10 highest employment occupations pay less than $60,000 a year, meaning that many of these workers could find it challenging to find housing in our community. And in Wallingford, approximately 40% of renters and 24% of homeowners are considered cost burdened. To be cost burdened in Wallingford, a household must have an income of at least $56,900.
Mr. Pagini, could you slow down, please, a little bit?
Yep.
If you would, thank you.
And according to the Alice Survival Budget, the annual total household survival budget for a family of 4 is $90,732. This is based on the bare minimum cost of basic household expenses necessary to live and work in this economy. And the, as outlined in Connecticut General Statute 830G, the Affordable Housing Land Use Appeals Procedure, that counts toward the 10% minimum is defined to include assisted housing, housing currently financed by CHFA mortgages, housing subject to deeds and conditions restricting its sale to or rental to low and moderate income people, and mobile homes or accessory apartments subject to similar deed restrictions. For Wallingford, a total of 894 units would be required to meet the 10% threshold. We are currently at 4.37%. In Wallingford, much of the town's household change and growth has been driven by smaller senior households. That speaks to the demand for smaller housing units with minimal maintenance requirements and increased accessibility features. Across age groups, the town of Wallingford has seen its largest population growth in residents ages 55 and older, and this is common across the region. These increases in older population may suggest a shifting need in housing preferences, as well as an increased demand for housing units that are accessible for people requiring additional assistance and support. Wallingford has experienced large percentage decreases in residents under the age of 18, as well as in adults aged 35 to 54. And let's see, based on the changes in housing composition by unit type, Wallingford saw a 5% increase in single-family homes totaling 632 units. Wallingford also saw a net increase in 2-unit, 263 units, and 10 to 19 unit structures, 127 units. These trends align with some of the strategies outlined in the POCD, which I tried to align the housing plan with, which the POCD recommended adjusting use regulations of the R6 and R11 residential zones to allow new 2- and 3-unit residences by permit. Other strategies in the POCD that support housing for current and future residents include providing a greater variety of housing options suited for older residents, such as reviewing the use of accessory apartment allowances and zoning, and to incorporate larger accessory units to meet the needs of older adults downsizing. According to sale price data, the median sale price of homes in Wallingford has increased from $195,000 6 years ago to over $310,000 now. And the summer of 2021 saw sales growth outpace the for-sale housing inventory, which has led to higher demand and consequently larger price increases in previous years. And gross rent, which is rent plus utilities, has increased by 2.6% between 2011 and 2019 to a high of $1,094 per month. In Wallingford, the largest share of rental units is those priced between $1,000 and $1,499, comprising 45% of rental units. About 39% of rental units have a gross rent of under 100 or under 1,000 per month. Between 2011 and 2019, rents of $1,500 or more per month increased by 34%, or 196 units. With increases in higher price rents and steady declines in lower rent option, changes in the gross rent distribution may be reflective of an influx in higher income households and newer rental stock. So the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, or 830G, provides an avenue for more additional affordable housing in Connecticut. And as of right now, Wallingford has 846 total units. So for this plan, the location of affordable housing was looked at so we looked at potential locations, and we looked near utilities and transportation infrastructure, areas that are walkable, near commercial or retail space, close to jobs, or near schools. The availability of developable land, land use and zoning information, areas identified in prior planning efforts such as the Plan of Conservation and Development, areas that are already seeing housing investments, residential development activity, or there has been an interest expressed in developing housing, and locations of older housing for rehab only. And the goals for the affordable housing plan were developed by looking at the data in the existing conditions report, a review of past planning efforts, including the POCD, a survey of Wallingford residents, and a series of discussions with town staff and elected officials, as well as commission members. And the intention of the goals is to chart a course for Wallingford and guide the future regulatory policy and programmatic decisions as they relate to housing. And the goals are as follows: preserve and maintain the town's existing affordable housing stock, Continue addressing housing gaps by focusing on the addition of affordable multifamily housing to support both younger and older residents, supportive senior housing and housing options that could support municipal employees and those who want to both live and work in town. Continue to diversify the town's housing stock by supporting the development of 2- and 3-family buildings, townhomes, and condominiums that could offer opportunities for both homeownership and rental housing. Increase the diversity of residents in Wallingford by ensuring availability of housing with a mix of housing types at a variety of price points. Modernize existing owner and renter housing units in neighborhoods to provide entry-level housing options for younger households and families. Increase awareness of housing potential in town by promoting opportunity sites to the development community. Align land use and zoning regulations, housing incentive programs, and public transit infrastructure to support additional affordable housing development. And promote resident education, communication, and discussion about implementing the affordable housing plan. And I don't know if you want to discuss all of the strategies or specific strategies, or just kind of do a brief outline of what we're looking at potentially trying to accomplish.
Well, I guess to begin with, as far as where we stand right now, you mentioned it's something like 4 point some,
4.37%, yep.
In order to get to the 10%, we need about, what, 1,100 more units? Is that, I mean, somewhere in that ballpark, just to
Roughly,
give the commission a general idea, it's between
roughly
1,000
about-
to 1,100.
Yeah, about 1,000 to 1,100, correct, yeah. Because you need 1,894 to reach the 10%, and we're at 846 roughly, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think, not sure how other commission members like to proceed, but I think we'd like to talk about what some of the strategies are. I know there's some strategies that could, rest with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and there's others that are more, at a more town-wide, or I won't say out of our purview, but would bring in other, other entities. So you perhaps go over some of the strategies, but slow down.
I think we're looking at a resident education program to promote awareness and understanding of affordable housing, to reduce pushback from residents toward housing developments. And that would be done through either town staff, through SCROG, things of that nature. A landlord education program to increase private landlords' willingness to accept rental assistance vouchers. Create or continue affordable housing committee in the community. So we're looking at possibly developing an affordable housing committee, maybe having some commissioners, some developers, Wallingford Housing Authority, whoever would want to be involved on that, to maybe meet every couple of months just to implement the strategies in the affordable housing plan. Review existing zoning to remove barriers to housing production and increase housing production. So as we have been discussing, we're obviously discussing the incentive housing zone in the next couple of months. And maybe we also look at our maybe HOD zones, see if we could make it easier to allow for more development instead of a developer having to come in under 830G and kind of forcing it, possibly create a more flexible HOD zone to allow it in other zoning districts.
Well, we have that now, don't we? We have a town-wide. I know we have several ones that were for specific properties, but we have a town-wide one, correct?
Correct, but it does restrict some zoning districts, so maybe look at that one to maybe allow for more.
So instead of kind of creating the whole wheel again, to look at that perhaps, and where it only indicates it could be in certain specific zones, I think as we know, it can be in essentially all zones except industrial. So
Correct.
maybe one way to address that would be is just to look at what we currently have as a town-wide regulation to perhaps modify that.
Yes.
Or eliminate that, naming all those zones that it could be in, where in fact it could be in other zones.
Let's see, I won't go through, do you want me to go through all of the strategies?
No, I think just the ones that were key ones that you might see that there's some opportunities, especially for the commission. I know it talked about, creating an incentive housing zone. Obviously, we've done that, although I think we're certainly perhaps need some additional discussion on that. And I suspect we may have that at at our workshop, hopefully later this month.
I just did add some strategies that were in the POCD into here, so as supporting the Wallingford Emergency Shelter and providing adequate emergency housing for families and individuals in need. Like you said, we created, the incentive housing zone exists, so I don't know if the commission would want to look at maybe other places to potentially have an incentive housing zone. That may be discussion for the future. Employer-assisted housing, possibly, maybe talk to, who knows, maybe talk with the town and see if they'd be willing to put out some kind of employer-assisted program to help their employees live in town. Encourage missing middle housing options. I think this is important because there's a lot of that middle housing is non-existent, especially in this area. And like I said, with the aligning with the POCD, more options for senior housing. I think there's a definite need for senior housing. I've gotten calls about wanting more senior housing in the community. And I think we're also going to be talking about reducing parking requirements for qualifying developments. So with those new state requirements under Public Act 2129, so maybe we could have a discussion on potentially lowering some of the parking requirements. I think preservation of existing affordable housing also should be a key strategy. Create housing education and resources, like I said before, creating public education program, possibly looking to implement a senior tax relief or work-off program, maintaining counts on affordable housing preservation and an annual report, public housing redevelopment, preserve and maintain existing affordable housing, creation of a rental registry and inspection process. I've worked in another community that had this, and it seemed to be a pretty valuable resource, but it does take a lot of staff time. So that might be something to potentially look into. Public employee housing, and just creation of a standalone accessibility assistance program. So this would be helping homeowners to install accessibility improvements to their houses. So that's pretty much the last of the strategies. Any discussion?
Any comments from any of the commission members? Sure, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when this, excuse me, when this, you know, came up, we got to, you know, drafted this at the regional planning. So you know, we've gone through this once or twice before it came to us. And the one question I really had, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, we, in the last year or two, we opted out, I believe, of those little in-law type, you know, houses and back of houses.
Yes, the granny pad, I think, right?
Yeah. So my question is, would those qualify as affordable housing units? I mean, would we have to get back into that program? And basically the question is, would those, you know, be part of, you know, the affordable housing requirement?
I imagine they could be if they were deed restricted. They'd have to be some sort of deed restriction or qualifying program, I would imagine. That's any other thoughts? I know Mr. Fitzsimmons had a.
I was just whispering to the chairman, Commissioner Cohen, the granny shed rule that came out from Connecticut was to address, and I remember distinctly, I think Casey was here, to address Lower Fairfield County, West Hartford, where they don't allow accessory apartments. Since we allow accessory apartments, we didn't need to adopt it because it was to force towns that didn't allow accessory apartments. Was my recollection of that. The granny shed thing, or she shed rule.
Right. My thought on this was, in my mind, and again, I'm trying to recollect, that these were technically not accessory apartments, but
They were standalone. They were standalone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were standalone.
So again, just, the question I have is, if we allowed those, would they count as, something contributing towards affordable housing? So that's all. And if it is, maybe that's something we ought to, reconsider.
Well, I think, the new accessory apartment law that we'll be discussing does allow for detached accessory apartments. So that might be something to look
Okay.
into.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other commission members? Yes.
Mr.
No, Mr. Hine, and then you, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I went through this, this plan and a lot of great information in here. But the one thing that I kept thinking about was that, our job, our sort of jurisdiction is the regulations. And there's all these great strategies, but we're sort of limited to creating and enforcing our regulations. And I guess the question that I would have is, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town planner, do you have some suggestions as to what we can do from a regulatory standpoint to promote or encourage affordable housing? And what can we do as a commission with other town departments to make this a priority so that everybody's working towards the same goal to get closer to that 10% figure?
I think, like I just discussed with the chairman, to potentially look at our existing regulations and see how maybe we could expand, the different zones that we allow some of the HOD zones in. So hopefully by, maybe possibly even look at expanding the incentive housing zone to different maybe areas. Maybe look at, I don't want to reinvent the wheel because a lot of our existing regulations do cover much of what affordable housing guidelines are. They just are sort of restrictive to certain zones. So I'm looking at possibly discussing with the chairman, looking at opening it up in the RF40, other zones, maybe everything except industrial areas, to allow for developers to come in and propose more affordable housing developments, something of that effect.
And one of my other questions is whether you have taken a look at, what towns have seen a large increase in their affordable housing over the past 4, 5, 10 years, and what, if anything, they have done to achieve that increase. Were there certain programs, certain things that they did to allow them to experience that increase? Before I forget, we do have an email here from Mr. Wiedemann, and I had taken a look at it because he is in the business and has a lot of experience. And one of the points that he makes is that one of the ways to encourage affordable housing is to actually increase the inventory of housing in general. And I'm wondering whether there's anything within our regs regarding either single-family or multifamily residential projects that you believe could be too limiting developers, or if there's any way that we can encourage further residential construction to achieve.
I think, like I said, some, like the RF40, I think, could be potentially a way to, you know, expand, see, like what North Haven has done. They've mixed in residential and the North Washington Ave district, something like that. So maybe potentially looking at, you know, allowing for more multifamily development in some of those commercial zones. I don't know, it could be at least a discussion to have. I mean, I guess there is a reason why as to, it's not allowed now, but I don't want to overstep. But I think at least maybe having the discussion to allow potentially even affordable housing. And obviously, we're having a density discussion, and I think a lot of these towns that have met the requirement do have a higher density in, say, like the transit-oriented development area or districts. So, and I think there are some different ideas I've gathered from different towns. Floating zones is another idea that could potentially be a way, but it seems like all of our regs do have the flexibility to allow for more housing. It's just a matter of it maybe possibly expanding the zones that it's allowed in. So I think we've done a lot of good work with the regulations we have in place. Maybe we just need to look at different areas as to where it's allowed.
Is there anywhere that we can look to see what towns in Connecticut have seen the highest increase in affordable housing units over the past, let's say, 10 years?
I could definitely ask for that data. I haven't seen that data. I've seen a list of the actual, you know, towns that are meeting the requirement, but it doesn't say, you know, how long they've met the requirement. Or, but I have looked into where other towns that were struggling to provide any as to how they've gotten more affordable units, and it has been through higher density in the TOD zones and allowing for more multifamily residential and commercial zones, things of that nature. So,
And then who else sees this plan other than us? Who else gets a copy of this plan in town?
anyone can request it. It'll be available for review. Wallingford Housing Authority has been involved during the discussions of the plan as well. And I actually did have a sit-down with Mr. Wiedenman about his email, so I wanted to get his perspective on it.
Yeah, I just, again, I mean, I think we should do everything that we can do to encourage affordable housing, but it's got to be a team effort, and I think to some extent it would be helpful if there were other departments and organizations within the town that were on board and had reviewed this, and we could sit down with and have a group discussion. Really.
And I think having the affordable housing plan subcommittee would be very helpful in getting people together on maybe even a bi-monthly basis just to discuss strategies and, you know, how to do this. So you're welcome to be on that.
I would love to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I guess just to be clear though, we were talking about affordable housing here right now in an affordable housing plan. As far as looking at regulations that may make opportunities available in other districts for 2- and 3-year multifamily housing, while that's certainly could be a goal for this commission, but if it's not restricted, then that does nothing toward meeting our affordable housing plan. So I think we have to keep that in mind.
That's correct.
Certainly it's to look to provide areas or zones. I know we have a downtown district zone where, in fact, you could have some redevelopment, repurposing of buildings or properties, provided there is a certain square footage where you could put in, depending on the size of the lot, multifamily homes in there. Also through our OSPRD, through I think our R6 through our R120, In that, you could put single-family, multifamily, 2 and 3, so there are, some options here, but I guess maybe I'm just too simplistic about things, and I know I am with some things, but to me, to a very large degree, with affordable housing, we have right now our regulations, which are a guideline, our overall, which is our guideline for developers who want to come into town. However, as we've seen in the past, where we've had several affordable housing projects, either, rental projects or a to build to sell, a developer has come in, or developers have come in with their own affordable housing plans. So, to a very large degree, while we've provided some guidelines and trying to give people some guidelines, anyone could come into town with an affordable housing plan and essentially put it anywhere. It doesn't matter if what we designate, even right now in our overall regulations, it says this zone, and this zone. Certain zones are excluded, but they aren't excluded by law. So that's where we perhaps need to, modify those regulations. I think where there's, some, from the commission standpoint, some opportunities where we talked about, the incentive housing zone. And I know we're going to have some, discussions on that, hopefully later this month, to look at density, because in that particular, with that particular type of overlay zone, that's where, density comes in. And, right now, I think we'll all agree our density is something like 26 units, an acre, which I think we all agree is way too low, and you're not going to find a developer that's going to come in, while there's some financial benefits kind of at the end once the units are done. So to me, that's, one of the key things looking at, to certainly in the incentive housing zone, and maybe we want other overlay zones in certain areas where we'd start looking at density. So, but again, I think to a very large degree, and I know we have a member of the public here, a developer that was certainly, I suspect, would like to speak on this. But again, in my very simplistic mind, to a large degree with affordable housing, it's really the developers that would come in and and drive would drive that, because there's limited options if a plan came before us where we would be able to deny it. I think we've been very fortunate for the projects that we've had, that a developer has come in, spoken with the town, gone over the plans, and and worked with the town to get something that's that the town the town feels very comfortable with. My other question is, I know we have on our agenda, we're saying it's affordable housing plan discussion and possible action. We can't take action on this tonight because we have to have a public hearing.
No, you do not.
Okay, it
Yeah,
says,
the law department already discussed this at length with me. She says that the statute reads where you do not have to have a public hearing.
okay, so but in our plan it says we do.
Yeah, that's a typo. I've discussed this with Ms. Small several times, just to make sure.
So if we decided to approve this, then we'd have to modify that line in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Parent?
I took a look at this thing several times. One of the things that concerns me is when we start with between pages 49 and 57, this is when we start talking about the strategies. And it's a former state business manager for a lot of state organizations. I started looking at the personnel and just for each one jotting down who's going to do it, leading by staff, leading by staff and others, and then and leading by others by themselves. And I came out, well, the total led by the staff alone is 12. The total of the strategies left by the staff and others, which is 11. And then others that don't require the staff or anybody else is 3. And I'm saying, well, if we pass this plan, that kind of implies a good faith effort to make it work. And I'm just wondering where this staff is coming from.
Well, it's a requirement by the state, so we kind of don't have a choice but to pass it. And the strategies are, general guidelines to work towards over a 5-year period at least. And, staff would be either my department or Wallingford Housing Authority or other departments in town if necessary, so.
Yeah, and I think they're explicit, they did say Housing Authority, they said, Planning and Zoning Commission. But I mean, I guess the question is, do you have staff anywhere near large enough to handle this? Or
Probably not.
are we going to have to go, go to the town and say we got to put people on?
Well, these aren't like, you don't have to meet every one of these strategies. They're just strategies to work towards affordable housing, so there's no requirement to meet every single goal or strategy.
But there should be a good faith, but if you're applying the plan, sir, my point is that then you should pass it in good faith. That means you're going to do these things.
Yeah, I think we have enough staff to handle most of these.
Okay, well, that settles the question. One of the things I found a little bit disturbing was on the overall town sentiment. And a bare majority says we have to create affordable housing. 13% are not sure, and 37% say no. And in my review, like the political science literature and seeing some of the things that have gone on and different proposals here, that 37% no obligation, I think could really be enough to really defeat a lot of these plans that would be put forth. That's just a concern.
Yeah.
And then when I was looking at page 41, they talk about low income and everything like that. It says a person with assets of $1 million with return of 6% does not meet the 1 through 80 AMI low income threshold. I mean, you could be a millionaire and essentially be distressed by this. And then finally, one thing, I read it somewhere and I couldn't come onto it, but I think it's implied, at least on page 41, that there is a need for maybe upper scale, more expensive housing, because they say that you've got a lot of people who have an income to afford larger housing, but
Yes.
apparently can't find it, and so now they're crowding out in that affordable housing range. I just see that as a problem.
Yes.
But no, those are my comments.
Thank you. Other commission members? Ms. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to say I supported the comments of Commissioner Parent. I too was quite concerned about the strategies outlined and the perceived workload for the town departments and this commission. I think Commissioner Heim made reference to the email we received from Mr. Wiedemann, who's in the audience, and I found his email and his guide to particular questions to be very helpful to reviewing this plan. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pagini, this was a product of the South Central Regional Council of Governments, correct?
Yes.
We got the Wallingford plan. Do you have access to other surrounding towns' affordable housing plan?
I can get, yes, I can.
Okay.
They actually gave us a list of strategies probably twice as long, so I actually narrowed them down to these.
Okay. No, but I guess in relation to Commissioner Heim's questions, as he said, how do other towns do it? How have other? I'm interested because I'd be crazy not to say I support affordable housing. And I think I've sat up here, is concerning as I read this, and when I read it, you know, and like Commissioner Parent, on page 25, where it talks about housing stock, and there's a line in there, you know, that talks about the fact that, you know, teachers in Wallingford and firefighters in Wallingford can't afford to live in Wallingford. At those, and it brings, you know, it's very concerning, because that should not be the case in a town like Wallingford. And I think, you know, and we have a net job inflow in town. More people come into Wallingford to work than leave town to work. And I just, it is concerning. So in short order, I would like to see another, at least one or two other towns' plans to kind of compare. I realize this was done with data ending in 19, when the market really started to go crazy, and then of course the pandemic hit, because it has only gotten more difficult for younger or any new person to try to buy a house in town. And I really, I don't know when it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman. I would like to get into the very specific questions and statements in Mr. Wiedeman's email, because I think he provided a very specific action plan in his first paragraph, which talks about our own plan of conservation development, where, quoting Mr. Wiedeman's email, the POCD should be adjusted to encourage the construction of 2- and 3-unit residences in some zones and the review of the regulations pertaining to accessory apartments. Right there is a tremendous action plan that we said we would do in the POCD. I know we've been busy with other things, but there, he gave us a very specific idea as an instance of what we could be doing. So I guess in short, I know we have to potentially act on this. I still like to see some other towns which might be deemed comparable to Wallingford, to see how others have done it, because I do think there is work for us to do. And then, Mr. Pagini, you mentioned someplace you were previously, they had something, and I apologize, I think you talked about whether it be a renter locator or something that the town do, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but what exactly was that?
It was a rental permit registry.
Okay.
So they actually kept track of every renter in the entire city, and they had basically 3 strikes, and then they weren't allowed to rent if they broke the rules 3 times or more, and they had specific requirements. So it allowed for stricter renting provisions, so it doesn't allow just like landlords to pretty much let properties just go to disrepair and whatnot, and problem properties.
So was it meant to protect a potential prospective renter, or? Correct. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, and again, I think, anything we can do to promote this, because, and the chairman's going to know what I'm going to say, we do have an incentive housing zone. We've yet to receive an application.
That's
So
why I'm thinking expanding.
It's nice to have it in the books, but something's not working, whether it's the economy or the reg. So, but I don't, I've spoken enough.
I guess, no, Mr. Simmons, if I could, I think that we do have the incentive housing zone. I think we need to look at that, and hopefully we'll discuss that. But again, I know Mr. Wiedemann would like to speak, but I think what he's addressed and what you're addressing is to make more of the 2-3 family housing available, perhaps. But that, I don't see how that addresses affordable housing. And see, I think what we're looking at here is we're looking at an affordable housing plan. I think if we approve this plan, this is for affordable housing. I think we need to look at our regulations in our plan of conservation and development and look what's in there, and look at, I think what Mr. Pagini said early on, to see what we can do in some of the other zones in order to make those 2-3 family homes available. We make them available, there's no guarantee other than I guarantee you they're not going to be affordable. So, I think in some ways, I think we're talking about two different things.
Okay.
And to really go in two different places, again, affordable housing is one. And again, as I mentioned, I'm sure Mr. Wiederman will comment, as far as the affordable housing, I think a lot of that, maybe it's just me, I don't think we have a great deal of control on that, unless the town did want to take a property, and we all know some large property, or at least one large property the town bought. If the town was looking to partner in some manner with a developer in order to develop that into some type of affordable housing, that goes well beyond us. But as far as what we can do, as I mentioned, I think we have, or I know we have, our affordable housing regulations on the books as a guide for a potential developer. But again, anybody can come in with a plan.
Yeah.
So to me, in my mind, I think we're looking at two different things.
Yep, agree.
With that, if there's no more questions, I've seen Mr. Wiederman, I suspect I'd be disappointed if you didn't have some comments.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, excuse me, yeah, ma'am, you can't leave. I'm just kidding.
You can't be the only one in the room.
Oh, no, please. Well, I tell you, Mr. Wiederman, excuse me, Mr. Wiederman, no, if you could please let this young lady speak. Yeah, no, please. Well, we'd like to give the opportunity to speak. I'd rather have you speak.
My name is Rose Prunetta. I live at 560 North Main Street, and I'm really here representing the EDC.
Okay.
And I want to say that Jim Fitzsimmons is a good guy.
Oh, there you go.
We've yet to vote on that.
So, thank you, everyone. Just so everyone knows.
Just name and address,
Bob
please, sir.
Wiedemann, Sunwood Development. I'm a local builder developer. I live at 1443 Durham Road. I moved, so I have to think about where I live now. Also, for about 10 years now, a board member of the Wallingford Housing Authority. I'm not speaking on their behalf tonight, but I certainly understand the affordable housing issues, and I'm just amazed at all the different questions the commissioners have had, because those are all the questions that we need answered. And I'm not going to spend 2 hours, and I could go on for 2 hours, but I won't do that to you about this, because I'm really passionate about this affordable housing and how we can do it. I'll make just a couple of quick comments. One is, I think, Jeff, you started with it first. There's affordable housing that's deed restricted that will get you to your 1,000 units that you need, if you think you need them. You have to make a decision you need them. And what if you were able to get the 1,000 units? Would you decide now we've met our needs and that's the end of it? And in my opinion, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create housing which is affordable. One way to get that is to have deed-restricted units that will create affordable housing and maintain that. But if your only goal is to meet the state statute, that's a different conversation in my mind. Things like accessory apartments are very helpful to find an affordable house for an elderly parent or a young child in college, just getting started, that can't afford an expensive house, but if they don't have any land costs and they can move into their parents' accessory apartment, now currently allowed to attach to our houses, or someday in the future possibly a standalone unit in the backyard. That's an affordable unit that helps the needs of the town. But it's not going to get you one step closer to your 1,000 units.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to decide first what we're trying to do. And I think it could be both, in my opinion. It's not just regulations that help you get there. That's one thing that you guys obviously can control, is what does the regulation say. But the other important thing is, how is it implemented? For instance, we allow accessory apartments in town. The process to get an accessory apartment is a pain in the ass. I'm sorry to say it like that, but it is. North Haven does not allow, they don't have a regulation that says this is how you make an accessory apartment. You just go get a building permit to build an addition on your house. And if it happens to have a kitchen and a bedroom and a bathroom separate from the rest of the house, that's fine. There's no process. It's not even an administrative thing, which at the bare minimum, we should have it so that we walk into the planning office and we say we want to do this, we meet the setback regulations and whatever other rules you have, and Kevin issues a permit in 7 days. It shouldn't be, let's put an application together, a site plan, come sit down with you guys for 30 or 60 days, depending on how the schedule works, and then you guys say it's okay. That's just, quite honestly, too much trouble for people, and they just don't do it. So I think there are things not just within the regulations, but how they're implemented. I'll just stop at that. I'm not going to go into all the things. You've seen my email. I'm glad that Kevin shared that with everyone so you could kind of see some of the thoughts I have, and I've got 100 more. And again, I won't bore you with them all. But when we get to the workshop stage, I can start talking about specifics of each area of your regulations and where I think it can be improved or made better or make it easier. I think, quite honestly, we've done a pretty good job. We've had a lot of 830G applications. They've all been what I would call friendly 830G, where the developers and staff and the commission have worked together to come up with something, and no one's crammed a 500-unit project on a piece of property that nobody wants in a location that nobody wants, and it could come in tomorrow, but hopefully that doesn't happen. And I think with your willingness to discuss and negotiate and work out, we've come up with some very nice projects that have been built in town. Some that have been recognized across the state in that way. Just on that, Home Connecticut, Kevin, will get you the stats on the number of affordable housing that, Jamie, you were asking about. So they can get you that information. They have all the various towns and how many, again, deed restricted units, because that's the only things that count towards that 10% goal. You guys have already kind of touched on it. I'm just going to kind of wrap it up with this, and that is that I love having the plan, but if we make a nice plan, no matter what great information's in here, if it gets put on a shelf and 5 years later we pick it back up and go, time to update it, let's update it again, and we don't do anything with it. And to be honest, there's been some times in our past that our plan of conservation and development has sort of been that way. That there are things about 2 and 3 family houses, and I've been on 5, maybe revisions of that plan, and I've talked about it. And there are things that I've talked about, like 2 and 3 family houses in certain zones, because I prefer them over a raised ranch stuck the long way on a 50-foot lot that doesn't look in place, and it would be much nicer to have a 2-family house there. And I've never been able to move off center in 35 years or so. So those are the types of things that I see. But I want to make sure that this plan gets looked at. And you guys, some of you have already mentioned it. Let's have someone responsible, whether it's Kevin's office or a commissioner. Somebody's going to report back on a regular basis, whether it's monthly, quarterly, annually, and say, here's the plan. This is what we said we wanted to do. How are we doing on it? Are we getting there? If we're not, like you said, the incentive housing zone, great idea. The report would be, great idea, it's not working. So throw it away, change it, do something different. And I've got ideas on that when we get to that. But I would ask that you have someone responsible for reporting back to make sure that we're making progress towards the goals. And if it can be tied in with the plan of conservation and development, I think that's even more important, because those are the things that people show up every time. It's sad that there's nobody here in the room for this discussion, but they'll be here only 2 times on affordable housing. They want it when they or their family member needs it, or if it's in their backyard and they don't want it. The only time anybody's going to show up in this room to talk about affordable housing. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. I think it's important that we have the discussion, that hopefully we agree that we need it, and then how do we get there? And if we have an ongoing conversation about it, I think that's the way we'll keep it at the forefront and hopefully move it forward. So I'm open to help any way I can. I'd like to help on the committees that start talking about it in workshops. I won't take up any more time tonight, but I love the discussion. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. Any other commission members with comments? Yes, Mr. Hine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wiedemann, just to have you know, I may have a affordable housing in my backyard, and I will be here in support of it. I think I do think we have to be clear that we are discussing affordable housing and not low-income housing. And there's a big difference, as I think Commissioner Fitzsimmons had pointed out, and the report makes clear that there are teachers in our community that would qualify for affordable housing. you know, and so affordable housing is a good thing. And it's something that we should be striving for as a community. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other commission members? Okay, I guess at this point in time, Mr. Pagini, any final comments?
I just wanted to just thank Mr. Wiedemann. I think he's facilitated a great discussion, and he's, you know, been active in giving his comments and, you know, willing to engage with me and share his ideas and how to actually implement some of these ideas into action. So just want to say thanks.
All right, with that, any comments, final comments from commission members? I guess if not, I'd ask for a motion on this plan.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the Wallingford Affordable Housing Plan in accordance with Connecticut General Statute 8-30G requirements with an effective date of 5/9, because it creates a clearer strategy for affordable housing plan in Wallingford, with one correction, and that correction is to strike the bullet point on page 5. The municipality must provide at least 35 days notice for a public hearing on adoption of the plan and must make the draft plan available to the public for review prior to such public hearing, as the legal department has indicated it was not needed.
Thank you. We have a motion on this plan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohen, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Pagini. Moving on. Go to bond releases.
Yes, I went out to inspect Mr. Riccello's property at 200 Main Street in Yalesville, and I've decided to reduce the bond to $2,650 from $9,750. He pretty much stabilized most of the site in the basin. That's what our bond was for. He still has permanent seeding and some dust control to continue as he finishes construction. So he could, it'll be reduced to $2,650.
I have a motion based on Mr. Pagini's recommendation to reduce the bond.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we reduce the bond to $2,650 for application 208-17, site plan Riccello, 20 Main Street, Yalesville, AKA 103 North Turnpike Road.
Do we have a motion to reduce the bond? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Moving on. Mr. Pagini, if you just take over, please.
Sure. Any questions on the 6-year capital and non-recurring budget? I probably won't be able to answer much of it, but it was.
I just have a couple questions. If you could ask, I don't know if it's our town engineer, our public works or whatever. You know, I'm looking at, you know, on one for, you know, sidewalks and, you know, there's, there was something in for sidewalks.
Yeah, I could certainly make a note for.
Next, yeah, just on, you know, and one thing I've noticed that we have a plan to fix, yeah, here we go, to fix sidewalks town-wide. I'd ask the engineering or public works, when did we start fixing sidewalks with asphalt? You know, I mean, we have, I noticed, you know, on Center Street, on the side of the street, I guess it'd be the south side where the cemetery is. I mean, that sidewalk has been repaired, it's asphalt. We have a couple of sidewalks on, just on Center Street, I think one just across the street from us, where a small section has just been patched and it's been asphalt. I don't know if that's because of the weather, they don't want to cement it, and they'll put the asphalt and then do the cement, but I just hope that we're not getting to a point where we're looking at some sidewalks and repairing sidewalks with asphalt. I mean, especially, and I don't think it's I know we have probably some sidewalks in some areas that are all asphalt, but, I mean, certainly in our town center to start doing that type of repair work, I'd have a real concern with. I don't think it's certainly very attractive and a way to do it. And I know that we get this as far as, streets that need to be, or recommended to have, rebuilt and repaired. I guess I would, and I know we get the plan and we need to act on this, but I would just suggest that we at least mention to the mayor, our town engineer, our public works, there's a couple streets that, at least that I look at, that I think are certainly in need. And in one of them, and I'm not saying to change this, but I think people need to look at this.
Right.
And that's on, that's on on, South Cherry Street between Hall Avenue and Quinnipiac Street. I mean, that
Yes.
street's a mess.
Yes.
And it's been patched a couple times, and it's still, I think that it's a small stretch, but certainly in need of repair. And then the other is just, and this is a state road, so I think that we need to have some discussion with the state, and that's in that same relative area, which is from Cherry Street to Route 5 on Quinnipiac Street. That, especially when you get toward Route 5, it's just been patched, there's holes, so I would hope that the town would have some discussion with the state to, get that stretch done. And, I would recommend that the town take a very hard look at, the space between Cherry Street between Hall Avenue and, and Quinnipiac Street, because that's been like that for quite some time. And I know it's been patched a little bit, but
I agree. So I will.
You just pass that on.
Sure.
Any commission members with any questions or comments on this? I guess with that, I'd entertain a motion on this 6-year capital and non-recurring budget.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the 6-year capital and non-reoccurring budget to be, was it remanded up to town council?
I believe so.
Remanded up to Wallingford Town Council for their approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on.
Now the election of officers.
Oh my! We finally have.
We're all here?
We finally have enough people for this. All right. At this point in time, I guess it's finally time for election of officers. At this point, I'd ask if we have any nominations for chairperson.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we elect Jim Seichter as the chairman of the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
I guess then we need to ask, are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we have a second. We'll begin voting with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And I'll abstain.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And at this point in time, I entertain a motion on the election of a vice chairperson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate J.P. Benoit as vice chairman of this commission.
And do we have any other nominations? None. Do we have a second for Mr. Benoit?
I would proudly second that.
Good. Seeing no other nominations, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
And yes, it looks like I started a trend here. And finally, for secretary, do we have any nominations for secretary?
I make a motion that we elect Stephen Allenson as secretary of the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission.
And do we, I guess I'd entertain a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Oh, yeah, yes.
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 Abstain.
I'd like a few more minutes to think. Yes, yes for me. And so we've elected our third, I certainly thank you, gentlemen, for your confidence in me not to screw things up too badly for at least the next year.
Just be here for all the hard ones, don't go away.
And with that, if you'd please continue on our agenda.
Administrative approvals, any questions on those? ZBA decisions, any thoughts, questions? ZBA notice for May 16th. And any questions on zoning enforcement reports?
Any questions on any of those items by commission members?
I do, sir.
Sure, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Sorry. Is it possible to get an update from you, Mr. Panini, on where your office is as far as zoning enforcement with the vape shop in Quinnipiac Street?
Yes, we went down there today, actually, and he's in the process of being referred directly to law for potential prosecution within possibly a week, because he pretty much denied, he pretty much went against everything we told him not to do. We issued an immediate cease and desist before he was even open. We actually went in there several times and told him he could not do that in that location. He since has said that he was been changing some product up, but we saw no indication of that as of today. So we did refer it directly to law department, and they're going to take swift action, hopefully. So we were not happy, to say the least.
If I might continue, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think it always concerns me on a zoning violation, someone gets a cease and desist and someone else doesn't. So I understand this one is, we received a letter, I received a copy, I think most of us received, I think through you, we received a copy of the letter. Are there a lot of zoning violations that are currently with the law department?
Just smaller ones, say like some of the roosters that she can't find necessarily, or some duck violations, things of that nature. But most of them are either being addressed with the law department and or we try to actively bring them in compliance. So there is one that we have been working with that hasn't been referred to law, that we were told that they stopped doing it, but now we're getting complaints again. So we've been back and forth with people.
If I might, and actually, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, I mean, and we all know who we had here earlier. The neighbors must have been nuts on the first applicant.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, I say this to all of you, we live in a small town. I want to make sure zoning violations get the appropriate response / action, and you've heard it, and I don't know what's appropriate. I mean, I've called the office because some get a cease and desist and some don't, and I've always understood that we had the ability to fine, and then, I asked earlier, because the fine would actually go to the property owner, not the business owner in scenarios. And so that, like, for example, if I understand correctly, for the vape shop, that would be the situation. You know, he's a renter, I don't know what other towns do, but I request maybe next workshop or next time we have some time, because I know this always gets thrown at the end of the agenda. I'm between everybody leaving, but I think zoning, we spend a lot of time on applications, and then everything's up to you guys. And then when a violation comes in, and they're, you know, tonight we had two of the applicants, 2 of the 3, were trying to correct things that have been there for a while. It's very frustrating, I think, for me as a commissioner, as a resident of town, and people, you know, just, you know, as I said, people talk, what's going on, and we need to be more consistent and proactive in all violations. I'm not so worried about the chickens and the ducks and all that. I mean, you know, other people are, because it's not my backyard, but I do get the, you know, it's a small town, and people always talk about zoning violations. Some are more egregious than others.
And I don't want you to think like we didn't take the Summerwood Drive thing seriously. That was a very serious problem.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't want you to think like we're nonchalant.
Nope.
No, We worked with him as well as we could, and we didn't want to initiate things that, you know, may have set him back to actually stabilize the property. So it was a very kind of tense process with that whole situation. So the environmental planner was involved heavily as well, so.
Sure. No, I guess I would just kind of interject just on a vape shop. I think that, you know, that with the violation becoming known, you know, that's in somewhat of a more easier one to address in that you have someone who's operating the business illegally, not the manner it should be operated. So it's easy, I think, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Pagini or our ZBA officer, you know, to simply go out and knock on the door and say, you know, you have an issue here.
Right.
And it's a very easy issue to comply with if the individual wanted to do that. And, you know, I know that the, you know, ZBA and Mr. Pagini took that, you know, took a, you know, a very proactive position on that. But again, I agree with you. I think we have to be, you know, we have to be consistent.
Yep.
So, if, I guess the final thing, Mr. Pagini, workshop on, we talked about, you know, density issues. Do we have that nailed down?
Yep, it's looking like May 19th at 6, and I'm looking at room 315. I don't think the hubcap is necessary for that discussion. I don't anticipate that big of a crowd, but.
And you'll be able to provide to us at that meeting to get some samples from other towns have as
Yep.
far as, you know, what they're looking at is density and those types of issues.
Yep, and I did speak with Dennis Genevieve just recently regarding what Meriden is proposing as far as densities in their TOD zone, so.
They were increasing, were they increasing that to 50 or was it more than that?
Yeah, they're increasing their market rate potentially to 50 to coincide with their TOD regulations for 50 for affordable, so.
So it's 50 for affordable is what they're looking at, is that correct?
Well, it's currently at 50 for affordable, but
Yep.
they want to raise the market rate also to 50.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, good enough. There's no further business. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn the May 9th, 2022 Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? We're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.